Hello everyone, welcome to Data Ki Baat with Sanjeev, where I talk about data, strike meaningful conversation with humans behind data, and share data story with you all. So let's data. How important is data for you? Data is the new oil, data is the new asset, data is the new economy, data is the new currency, data is new air, data is new water, data is new oxygen. Well, this is not me saying, these are the sayings from a big shots. But the underlying intent of all these metaphors is to really help you understand that data is very important. It is so much part of our life that we cannot even move an inch without interacting, dealing with data. There is so much connection between data and life. If you have been following me on LinkedIn, looking at my articles, my posts and my comments, you would be aware that I am running an initiative, my personal initiative, Master Your Data, Master Your Life. As part of the event, I am trying to socialize with people, creating awareness around data, showing them the connection between data and life. What are you thinking right now is data. Your emotions are data. Your feelings are data. See, there is a lot of connection. So how do you manage your life? Yes, by managing all your data. Similarly, organization. How do you manage? How do you get into a digital transformation mode? By managing your data, by mastering your data, by governing your data. Did you know that Government of India is working on Personal Data Protection Bill? This bill talks about how personal data should be protected, treated, processed, stored and shared. This is going to be a big change for a country like India. This is going to be a big challenge for an organization operating in India. And this is the opportunity for our individual as well as organization to really know what is going to come. What is there in the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is still in the draft mode, but it is going to be a reality very soon. Are you ready? Are you prepared? How about preparing early rather than later? Experience with the GDPR has shown the world that it is going to take a lot of time, effort and last minute rush if you wait for the day when you have to comply with the rules and regulations of data privacy. So with that, in today's episode of Data Ki Baat, I am talking to the data governance coach, Nicola Askham. She is from UK, where GDPR has been implemented. She has done a lot of work in the area of data governance. She feels that some of the principles and practices of data governance can be successfully applied to achieve compliance with data-related regulations. So let's talk with Nicola on today's show. I want to thank you for accepting my invitation and a big namaste from India.
Thank you. It's a great honor for me to do this and to be working with somebody who's as passionate about data as you are.
Thank you very much. So before we start and move our conversation on, I want to talk to my India audience here and say that, guys, we are having the data governance coach right from UK. She has been doing a lot of work around data governance and helping organizations across the world. And this is not enough. What I want to also share is that we are going to organize an exclusive event where we will be talking about data governance and how we can apply that to achieve compliance related data regulatory requirements. So watch out for that, and if you have not registered for that, I would highly recommend you do that. So back to Nicola. Nicola, So how about starting our conversation today by letting and talking to our audience of India and sharing something about yourself, more specifically about the data governance coach as such, because it's only one in the world.
Thank you. Yes, well, I have to thank the wonderful Dylan Jones for coming up with my brand title, but it works really well for what I do. So I've become known as a data governance coach for the last 8, nearly 9 years, but I've actually been actually doing data governance for 16 years. I started doing it in a bank over here, and then I realized I'd found my thing, the thing I felt really, really passionate about, and I think it's fair to say I did it very badly in the early years. But as I had more practice, I grew in confidence, and I worked for 2 small boutique consultancies that specialized in data before I got brave enough to work on my own. And the one thing I've noticed is that data governance takes a long time. People always underestimate that. And it's better done by the people in their own organizations. It's just that they don't know how to do data governance. So that was why the data governance coach was born, so that I could help people by training and coaching them, generally supporting them and holding their hands while they do data governance themselves. And I'm very, very lucky. I love my job and I get to work with some amazing people who are always passionate about data, or mostly.
That's really awesome to know. And I just wanted to share with the people who are watching us now is that when I searched on a Google and when I typed the data governance coach, it was only you. So that's how I put that, the world's first data governance coach. And I believe truly, Nicola, that coach is required for everything that we do. Everybody needs a coach. And whether it is a life or data, we need coach. So that's the reason I really see your passion and see your title really suits you, because you have been helping organizations like anything. So what are the different areas, what are the different domains have you supported those organizations? I mean, how did you really help them achieve their data governance journey with your unique methodologies?
So I think it's mainly about, I find that people fall into this trap of thinking there's a standard data governance framework or an approach for doing it that will work for everyone. And my argument is no, every organization is unique. You've got different industries, even within the same industry or sector, you've got different cultures within organizations. And so I think there isn't such a thing as a standard approach that's going to give you successful and data governance that will deliver you benefits. But what I have learned over the years is that there's a set number of things that you have to consider, and if you do these things and you do them in the right order, then I find that my clients end up designing and implementing a data governance framework that's right for them and is successful because they've gone about it the right order and the right way. And I think that's what I have found has helped people the most, is that almost like by sharing my own personal journey and experience of, don't do that never works, but always do this and consider this, and things will go well.
Right. Every situations and every organizing scenario is different. So different approaches apply, but the core to the journey, the data journey remains same. And recently, I had an experience of speaking to children from school, and I am a strong believer of really talking about how we can simplify this complex subject and make it really accessible to everybody. Right. So that's the reason we have been really, I'm trying a lot of work around how we can bring data to a common people. And that really brings up a very, very, very popular topic in India nowadays is Personal Data Protection Bill of India. And that's being, really, coming up. Have you heard about that?
I have, only a little bit, and mainly from your wonderful posts that you're putting on LinkedIn. But yes, I had heard a bit about it.
Right. So as part of Master Your Data, Master Your Life initiative, I have taken it on myself to really educate, share, and create awareness around personal data protection. So I've been really putting a lot of effort on putting those content, and then that's where I kind of got to know you and I started collaborating with you. And so you are from a country where GDPR has been launched, and I would say that happy belated birthday GDPR, because it's already 1.5 years around been launched. So how has been your experience about GDPR from the country's standpoint, and what are the different challenges organization has faced during the implementation?
Good question. So I think probably the biggest challenge that I noticed and saw was that organizations just severely underestimated the scale of the task and the sheer amount of effort it was going to take in order to comply with the requirements of GDPR. And I think that a lot of people struggled because they didn't understand that the vast majority of employees in their organizations just weren't data literate. So they didn't really think about the data they were using or producing. So they didn't really even understand what was being asked of them by the people that were running the GDPR programs. Because they just never really had to think that much about the data they were using. So in what I've come across and seen and heard from a lot of people is it took a huge amount of effort to track down what personal data was being used in organizations, who was using it and for what. And that was only the beginning. You've then got to go through putting in place the proper management of that data and getting it all documented properly. So a huge effort, I'm afraid.
Right. So as they say, right, I mean, if you would not be able to improve on something if you really don't know how much and where are all those, lying. So if you really don't know where are
Absolutely.
all your data, you probably wouldn't be able to really manage it. So discovering what you've got is the first step, is what I am inferring from your conversation.
Absolutely.
Right. So you are one of the sought after data governance coach, or I would say in that domain. And what I have seen and I've heard, uh, how how is your take on personal data as such? I mean, as an individual first, and then from personal data protection as such, from the domain, from the organization standpoint.
Okay, good question. So I think obviously there's legal definitions of it all, but to me personally, I think that personal data is the data about a private individual. So it's about me, and it's the data that actually belongs to me. So it's my name, my address, my date of birth. It is kind of all those details that are unique to me. And I think the protection part comes in and is important because it kind of says what the title is that saying that we give those details to an awful lot of organizations these days. And we need to trust that they're going to protect our data, that they're going to use it appropriately, keep it secure, and also not to share that data with other people, either without our permission, as we've seen a lot of cases happening where people sell data, or even if it's unintentionally and that they haven't secured the data properly and they've suffered data breaches. And we've seen a lot of those in the news recently.
Right, right. And we have been really, talking about, in India context as well, that how the organization should be really preparing beforehand rather than waiting till the last moment, because uh, GDPR implementation have really taught the world that it is going to be tremendous effort. It is going to probably take a lot of time than you can probably think. So uh,
Mm.
the message that I've been trying to give, that how you can really be proactive and take a first step early rather than really waiting for a long time to come and then see that, okay, you are probably maybe missing the timelines or maybe not compliant at all,
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
right? So since you have seen GDPR and then as your industry demand, you got to be aware of other regulations, other part of the country, because ultimately data is data, right? So how, I mean, if you can just highlight a couple of things that you have understood from your, experience, the difference between GDPR and the proposed Personal Data Protection Act of India. And for the user benefit here, right? Indian government is working on the Personal Data Protection Bill. It is in draft mode, but it is going to arrive very soon. So we want to make sure that you understand why and what about the data related regulations inside it. So the question is, right, what is the difference between GDPR as compared to the personal data protection from your.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I have to say, before I dive into what I think the difference are, I think you're doing an amazing job online sharing all your knowledge, particularly on LinkedIn, about the personal data protection bill. And I think that is absolutely vital that, somebody's making all that accessible. And, I think it's fair to say I haven't gone through it in the detail that you clearly have. You've obviously spent a considerable amount of time really getting to grips with this legislation, and I think that's admirable. But I think one of the first things that I think that is an observation about it is that your draft personal data protection bill does resemble the European GDPR. But I think one of the differences is that GDPR starts with the premise that, ownership of the data belongs to the individual. So if it's my data, as I said earlier, it belongs to me. And whilst I give it to an organization, it still belongs to me. Whereas I think the Indian Data Protection Bill doesn't make that quite so clear. It's maybe a little bit ambiguous on that point. And it talks more about a trust-based relationship between the data principal and the data fiduciary. So it uses slightly different names for the parties as well. That's another small difference. But I think another one is that GDPR is a lot about asking about the data security and the control, so that you know that the data is secure and not available to everybody else. And it also gives the user control and rights over that data. There's actually 5 key rights. And I think, from all the wonderful stuff you're sharing, it looks like your draft personal data protection bill seems to be doing a bit of a balancing act, trying to walk that middle path, seeming to want to empower both the users, but also give the states some powers over their data. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that one settles out. And then I think the other one that was really has become apparent to me is all about the right to be forgotten. Now, that's something that's in both acts, but in the EU for GDPR, the right to be forgotten actually is legally called data erasure, and it means what it says. The data has to be deleted. So unless there's a legal reason why an organization has to keep my data, if I exercise my right to be forgotten, they need to delete me. And I think that's where there's a big difference, is that in the Indian version, the right to be forgotten doesn't seem to ensure that data will actually be erased or deleted. So it'd be interesting to see, as that, the draft finalizes, what happens with that.
Right, and that's a great point. And just for a matter of sharing with you, lot of organization here are basically trying to look at the rules, the draft version, and then trying to see how, what is really there is any disconnect, what can be improved, because since it is in the draft version, they want to probably go and have a look at it and then go back to say government and propose what need to be there and what probably is not right for the overall benefit of people as well as organization interest. But that's a great point, especially this right to be forgotten and then right to eraser. These are the difference that we have also observed. So if somebody has to really take a first step, and as an organization of India, right? If somebody has to really take a first step from data governance standpoint, what are the key things that they can take? And maybe the first question is this: do you think that we can apply some of the data governance principles to really get started, or at least be a little ahead in terms of preparation?
Oh, absolutely. I think that what we've seen is, particularly in Europe, is that pre-GDPR coming out, data governance and data protection were very separate disciplines. And as long as you protected the personal data, as in you kept it secure and didn't give it to anybody you shouldn't, it could be absolutely rubbish, very poor quality, but you still complied with the law. And I think that, post GDPR, there's still very two distinct disciplines, but data governance gives you a huge foundation to meet a lot of the requirements of GDPR and will therefore do for the Indian personal data protection bill, because it puts in that foundation of knowing what data you've got, what it's used for, who can use it, and you start having the definitions, the understanding exactly where data is, and some accountability around that data. So you have your data owners and data stewards. So I think that whilst you're waiting for the bill to be finalized, I think getting a good data governance foundation would be such a fantastic thing to do. I can say from my own experience that clients I was working with that were already a reasonable way along their data governance journey found complying with GDPR a lot easier than those who were doing data governance at the same time.
That's really exciting to hear. And more of that, we are going to talk about more on this in upcoming webinar that we are planning with Nicola. Nicola will be present over there and then talking about more on how we can apply data governance principles and practices to achieve and get started with upcoming rules and regulations around data and data privacy. So stay tuned and do register for it. So coming back to our conversation, right? And I know, and looking at your profile in the work, you are helping organization big time, Nicola, in getting the data governance framework set, helping them along the journey, and then making them really data aware and helping them digital transformation journey, right? But if you really look at the personal data protection bill, it talks about organization as well as individual, right? We have talked about organization as such, and then how they can get started using data governance principle. Do you think there is any way a normal human being, an individual, can take something from data governance principles and apply some of those? I mean, obviously, if they know, but do you think there is some connect over there? How can
Well,
individuals?
yeah, I think there is, and I think that people need to be a lot more data literate. But I've been loving all the articles you've been sharing on LinkedIn, so I think perhaps I might pass that one back to you to answer, because I think you've been doing such a great job, and you know you're in a really good place to be able to articulate it. But people should be taking responsibility for their own data. But perhaps you could elaborate more, because say you've written some great stuff about that.
Right. I mean, if you really come back and to the message that I am trying to convey and the initiative that I am trying to lead, where I feel and I see a lot of connect between life and data, right? And if you just look at our day-to-day life, right, we cannot move even an inch without a data, right? And if you really want to avail all the services, all the digitization that we have around us, there is no other go but to share some of our data, and that's where the challenges start. I mean, where should we fall for the services and then lose our data, and then there should not be, right? So there are some checks and balances required. There are some management and governance required, even if it is an individual, because we are also living on data. We are generating data, a lot of data, right? So in one of the situation where I was talking to a bunch of school kids, my take is that if we start literating people, giving people education from the very elementary level, the school level, about why data is important, why their personal data is important, what they should be sharing, what they should not be sharing, we are basically doing the same thing. We are basically telling them how do they govern their data, and if they are able to do that, they would be definitely able to govern their life. So that's where master your data, master your life principle comes into the picture. So I strongly feel that the principle can be tweaked and applied to the individual as well, to be more compliant, to be more aware about the law, rules and regulations. So that's where I say, right, we should know our data duties and we should know our data rights. So that's where the whole thing started. So unless you know what's there, you might not even able to follow that.
That's very true. That's well said.
Thanks for the opportunity to letting me answer on that. So so that's really great conversation, and that brings us to a stage where we are thinking that how do we create more awareness, more of a again from your perspective, like how do we encourage what kind of a strategy that organization should take in India to be able to really make their employee ready early rather than later stage. So how do we make that kind of an education or awareness creation across on this regulation which is coming up, and so that they are ready, and obviously they should be able to take something from their data governance program if they have, but if they do not have, obviously they need to get one. But if they have, how they can really start getting ahead in the journey. Any information?
Any thoughts? Well, I mean, obviously my speciality is mainly training the corporates rather than the individuals, but I think it's fair to say that in any data governance implementation, a huge part of it is communications, briefings and trainings to the staff, because a part of it is getting everybody thinking about data. So I think that from my point of view, if you're doing that properly, you could easily start dripping the bits, and I think as a responsible employer, you should be sharing with your employees perhaps things that they should be thinking about their personal data. And I did see a lot of organizations do that as part of GDPR. That the training that they were rolling out for that was not just this is what we have to do to protect other people's data, it was also this is what you need to do to think about your own. So I think that is a fabulous opportunity, and I don't know whether you've had more thoughts on that as well.
Right. I mean, so that's the whole
point of sharing and making people aware, but my whole thought of getting this collaboration with you going on was to bring some global perspective to audience of India. I mean, I really want, and there is no one better than you. There are reasons that you've been really very, very engrossed into this data governance principle and practices, and I do love that. I've been doing that for a long time. And then you are coming from a country where GDPR, same rule, similar such rule is already been implemented, and now we are waiting for that. So that's a true combination, and I've been really, really fortunate that you understood the intent behind why I'm kind of willing to get you here, and then let people understand the global perspective, so that start valuing data. First of all, it starts with really be able to value the data that you are having. So unless you are able to attach the value, it is just data, right? So the context that you are talking to about the data really make it valuable or not, and that's the whole point. So with the lot of awareness, education, events like we are organizing one, people should be able to really start seeing and valuing data. I have to say that in India at this moment, right, we have been really not very much, I would say, careful as such. I mean, I want to be very cautious in telling statement here, but very, very cautious. They're not very cautious about using and then taking care of their data. I mean, like social sharing. I mean, we should probably start teaching kids that, hey, you should probably share less. Even if you have to share, you have to know what is the consequences. Those kind of. So use of digital, technologies, and being very, very care about your digital footprint is a message that I wanted to give. That be very careful about your digital footprint, because you are leaving your footprint every time you're interacting and availing any services from the organization, from using tools, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. You're leaving that footprint. So try to know and control that footprint, because it's going to last forever. So, and it can be a reason for a data breach, identity theft, maybe some kind of a hack. So we have to be very careful about that particular aspect from personal data perspective. However, the message to the organization that you've already given is that if you are having a data governance program already in place, it is a very good Kickstarter. But if you do not have, then you have to have one, because you've got to be prepared for upcoming data protection day.
Very well said.
That was really a very nice conversation. Any last minute parting thoughts you want to say something to audience of India, organizations of India?
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Sanjeev. It has been really interesting. It's great to talk to somebody as passionate about data as I am, and particularly love your passion about getting individuals to understand data and become more data literate, which I think is absolutely fabulous. And I'm just really love doing this, and I can't wait to do the webinar with you in a few weeks' time.
Thank you very much. And again, people, please go ahead and then check out. And there is something for everybody, whether you are an organization or an individual. You would certainly get some value out of that webinar. So looking forward to seeing all of you over there. Thank you very much for watching this. Nicola, thank you very much.